Welcome back. This is the much-awaited sequel to my Danielson video, and I hope you took a chance to watch that. I know it was long a bit, but I go over my thread on the vision of Daniel in chapter 7 of the Old Testament and how I see that there is a latter-day fulfillment of it. Now, regardless of that latter-day fulfillment, there is a tangent to go on here with the plucked feathers from the eagle kingdom, or the eagle that flies across the waters. This is Ezra here in this picture, lamenting because he saw a lot of visions. And we're going to be focusing in this video on his prophecy that's kind of popular right now, called Ezra's Eagle in the second Ezra's, or a book in the Apocrypha, the second book of Ezra's. And in this book, second Ezra's, there's a series of 7 visions that are described, visions that are given to him by the angel Uriel. I like Uriel, and it's fun to speculate who he is. Who do you think he is, Mino? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I was thinking about how what a coincidence that this week's Come Follow Me mentions the Apocrypha, ENC 91, right?
Yes. And so let me give a quick rundown. We'll jump into the Apocrypha, but let me give a quick rundown of this prophecy, just for anybody who's new to this. I really do encourage you. You've got to watch the Daniel 7 video. But Ezra sees a vision, and a vision of a kingdom in the latter days. Ultimately, this kingdom is an eagle with 3 heads that at first are sleeping, and then they have these little feathers or wings. They're described. The word's kind of interchangeable in the prophecy, and these are rulers of this kingdom that rule in succession. And this is all described in this prophecy. Now, most recently, there is an author, and his name is Michael Rush. He was the one to kind of first write a book about this in his book called A Remnant Shall Return. He's got a few chapters that are totally dedicated to going in depth in this. This picture is from another author named James Prout, who has a book called Last Days Timeline. I like the image. It's original as well for him, so credit to him. And I like his book. I disagree with a lot of his things, like I do with Michael Rush, in terms of Enoch and when these other beings like the 10 tribes and the city of Melchizedek, the city of Enoch, when they return, because of my cosmic perspective, I see things a little bit different than them. But overall, this prophecy of Ezra's Eagle is super beneficial, and it's playing out before our eyes. I believe that. And so we're going to read this verse by verse. We're going to go over it. We're going to explain a bit. We're going to talk about it. But first and foremost, a big question arises when you're talking about the Apocrypha, like why? And a lot of people will dismiss this prophecy outright because it is in the Apocrypha. Well, like Mino said, this week we're reading in section, was it 91? I can't remember.
Yeah, 91. Yeah.
Where we're supposed to read the Apocrypha, right? It was in the Bibles that our pioneers had when they crossed the plains, right? It was in the Bible that Joseph Smith had when he was translating, when he was doing the inspired translation, right? And that's why he asked ultimately in section 91, do I need to translate these? And the Lord said, well, there's a lot of great stuff, and they're mostly correct. There are some insertions or interpolations of man in there, right? So you got to be careful. Anybody who is full of the spirit of prophecy or the spirit in general is going to benefit therefrom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we're reading it with a faithful eye to say, how can this apply to the big picture? And now I will say this, just like Michael Rush, these prophecies from Ezra, they apply to the gathering of Israel. That's the crux of this, okay? Just like Isaiah's prophecies that most people aren't getting, that these main messages are the gathering of Israel before the millennium, before the second coming of Jesus Christ, right? This is the main story. This is the main point. It's not to predict the future about what's going to happen or whatnot, but focusing on this giant gathering that's been promised by the Lord, that he's about to fulfill his giant promises over thousands of years, over dispensations. It's going to come to a head right before our eyes. And Ezra saw this. Now, I have some evidence here.
And also, just to also kind of summarize on top of what you said. So Ezra's Eagle is a prophecy concerning America, where the feathers represent rulers, and essentially a timeline that we're at right now. So
correct.
Perfect.
We'll go over those rulers as well, who they were. For example, if you can see this, each one of them has a way to know, and there's a key that basically allows us to know this, and it's the second feather, because it's twice as long as anybody else. And now in our modern world, the only president to have served twice as many terms as anyone before him is FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. He served or was elected to serve 4 terms. He didn't serve the entire time, but he was elected to serve that many terms. And it's by...
This is where the length of the feather represents how long you serve then?
Yes, the terms essentially, and we'll go over that
To a
once we
degree,
start to
right?
read it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Perfect.
there are regular feathers or normal feathers, and then there are short or contrary feathers, or what they're called. And it's basically, did they serve out the time they were elected to serve out? Right. It's not so much a prediction on they have to be exact on this, but it's that. And I think FDR, I can't remember why he didn't finish his ultimate term. I think he died or something.
Yeah.
But he wasn't removed. It wasn't like the secret combinations or these eagle heads. They weren't removing him from office. That's the difference. Is that you have JFK, who's a short feather, as well as Nixon, who's a short feather. They were removed because Nixon was scapegoated for what was going on, as well as John F. Kennedy had turned on the CIA and their secret military-industrial complex and stuff. So they had to be removed. And then ultimately, on the other side of this eagle, this is where we are today in history. And so we're just giving you, so we're kind of peppering with the big picture here, and then we'll read it in depth. And hopefully by this time you've read it yourself, and maybe you've kind of heard other people talk about it. Maybe you watched Michael Rush's videos or James Prout's videos. That's good too. It'll all help. But here's the second one. And now, we got to cover up. I forgot. Mike Pence is not here. This is an old one from Prout's book from like 2017 when they were trying to figure out what was going
Old
to happen.
speculation thing. Okay, who's going to come after Trump?
Right. And so now that Trump was removed from serving a term that he probably should have served, or that the people would have elected, right? The body of the eagle would have elected him to continue, and he didn't. So he was removed by conspiracy, corruption. And that's a hot topic, right, today?
It is. It's a hot thing to say that the election was a fraud, and so in that sense there was corruption. The three heads intervened, and it was removed in that sense.
And newsflash: our elections have been corrupt for a long time. In fact, since the beginning of these eagle heads, pretty much.
They've all been frauds.
Yes, they've all been frauds.
All of them.
And our prophets have pointed to this. Okay, our prophets support this idea that our presidents are corrupt. And it starts with Herbert Hoover here, who's the first feather in this nasty end of times, prophecy here. But Ezra Taft Benson points to the CFR, who Hoover was a founding member of, as the organization in America that was destined to overthrow the freedoms of all men and all nations, right? They were the extension arm of Mystery Babylon here in America, and they had finally gained the seat of the presidency so that they could gradually change the laws and the constitutions and the people and everything else through their wars, through their military-industrial complex, through their spying and espionage and suppression of technologies and ideologies, et cetera, all of these nasty, evil ways. And this is not new. This is the same things that the pharaohs were doing to the righteous to weed them out by feeding them poison or killing their babies or all kinds of things. Like, this is people in power maintaining their power on a slave class below them. And this is what the Mystery Babylon is to us. So, all right, enough of that tangent. I was going to go in, and we'll still read this. Actually, no, I'm going to give you this assignment. Look how I've marked up a witness and a warning here. This is one of the speeches from Ezra Taft Benson. And maybe I'll read what I feel inspired to, but here's this. He says, "The Lord has declared this a day of warning and not a day of many words. My message is a witness and a warning about some of the evils which threaten America, a land I love with all my heart. There are other countries with this same problem. You have seen these dangers in the land you love will have a deep feeling for what I will say." Or you who have seen these dangers in the land you love will have a deep feeling for what I will have to say. Okay, I didn't need to read that. But I like the tone here is set in terms of he saw this corruption forming in our governments firsthand because of his cabinet seat that he had as the what was he?
Something we can all feel though as we're watching the current events take place, right? That we can all resonate with his words there. I really like it.
And I have to include this because of the tie into my Daniel 7 video where he talks about, right, straight up from America. America is a place of many great events. Here is where Adam dwelt, where the Garden of Eden was located. America is the place of former civilizations, including Adam's, the Jaredites, the Nephites. America is also the place where God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ, appeared to Joseph Smith, inaugurating the last gospel dispensation on earth before the Savior's second coming. This land is consecrated. It's a consecrated, blessed, promised land, okay? And I will tell you, Mystery Babylon, the Illuminati, right? Or the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the people who operate in secret societies and aggregate the mysteries of the world and suppress them and occult them, okay? They hide them. These are the sorcerers of today. They are the Mystery Babylon that understands that this land, for whatever reason, in all of the mythologies and scriptures and things that they've pillaged from the world, point to America as being a new Atlantis, right? It's their new golden age land where they are to build the American experiment that they will turn into the governing power of the world. They think they are building the New Jerusalem. Okay, they see all the texts. They see that there's this unified story of what the destiny of America is, and they think to know better than God, and so they have made a pact with the devil. That's essentially what is the crux under, like, the deep occult roots of these secret societies. And we could go on and on about this. Honestly, we could do podcast after podcast, especially if we wanted to explore the works of like Manly P. Hall, if you're familiar with him, one of the famous
visual groups for sure.
Yeah, he's one of the foremost historians in the Freemasonic and Rosicrucian circles, right? And his works speak explicitly to this idea that the people feeding Karl Marx his ideas, right? And the people feeding Hitler his ideas, the people feeding the banks that were dominating through their centralization of everything, right? The people feeding those ideas, they understood what they were doing, that they were competing for a New Jerusalem here in America. So you better guarantee that when I talk about the conspiracy of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith and his challenge to the protection of the Constitution that they were already usurping in 1830s and 1840s, right? They were already in a position to change laws and to obfuscate the freedoms that God had destined and covenanted with the people originally here. They were already messing it up. That's why Joseph and the Council of 50 and his run for president and everything like that was such a fervor leading up to his martyrdom. And I've linked before on Twitter, at me or shoot me a message if you'd like it. Maybe I'll leave it in the comments here. There's an article that was out of BYU. Somebody's dissertation or a giant piece was written about the Freemasonic connection to the martyrdom of Joseph Smith. That there were certain individuals that were in the crowd, that instigated the crowd, that the mob that day, that had done that previously in a town not too long ago, where they had murdered a political opponent of certain constituents within the government, right? So, and this is not a new thing. Assassins, okay? They ran through Freemasonic circles because you could get in with the Brotherhoods of Confidence, the people who respected oaths, and you could perform certain things without anybody saying anything. It's the exact same thing like the secret oaths that we read about in the Book of Mormon of to the death, are you going to protect your brother even if he's murderer? You know what I mean? Even if he's an assassin. So historically, kings and queens and governors and people of high power, mafias even, have used these secret societies and networks and even open fraternities as cover, right? Or priesthoods even, or churches, right? They run amok in everywhere, and they have been found in our churches as well. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you have satanic pedophile rings and things. Everything has been infiltrated everywhere. So don't be surprised when all of these things are ultimately revealed, that you find that, you know, you've got poop on your face as well, right? Because this is everywhere. And this is what the wheat and the tares and growing together means. Not just that there are some mean people, right? Or some progressives or some ultra conservatives that get super racist or whatever it is, right? That ultimately leave the church and they're the tares leaving out. No, there are some outright wicked people who have made oaths with Satan that are in our church. Okay, and they will be rooted out. And when their evil acts are identified, it will make your stomach turn. Like that's what I'm talking about, that you have to confront that kind of thing if you're willing to confront an Antichrist or the wars that we're about to see at Gog and Magog in the future and things like that. Like this is the tip of the iceberg, and we are getting glimpses and flashes coming quick. Like it was
this
first
is where, you know, it makes you think of some letters sent to the first presidency. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but stuff for another episode, right? There's
Yeah,
so many
definitely.
different parts of this, right?
Yes.
It's pretty crazy. But
Yes.
we can get to it later.
Right. Oh, but while I'm on that topic of, in terms of like these evil people who have a power over the land, I think maybe this would be a good time to read this Joseph Smith quote, just to get this kind of off my chest while it's hot. I'm feeling like I should read this now. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I spoke about this martyrdom of Joseph Smith. He said this on the day that he and Hiram were martyred. Okay, June 27th, 1884. Said Joseph, "Our lives have already become jeopardized by revealing the wicked and bloodthirsty purposes of our enemies, and for the future we must cease to do so. All we have said about them is truth, but it is not always wise to relate all the truth. Even Jesus, the Son of God, had to refrain from doing so, and he had to restrain his feelings many times for the safety of himself and his followers, and had to conceal the righteous purposes of his heart in relation to many things pertaining to his Father's kingdom." I'm going to read this whole thing because this is so important down to here. "When still a boy, he had all the intelligence necessary to enable him to rule and govern the kingdom of the Jews. And he could reason with the wisest and most profound doctors of law and divinity and make their theories and practice to appear like folly compared to the wisdom he possessed. But he was a boy only and lacked physical strength even to defend his own person, and was subject to cold, to hunger, and to death. So it is with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have the revelation of Jesus, and the knowledge within us is sufficient to organize a righteous government upon the earth, and to give universal peace to all mankind. if they would but receive it. But we lack the physical strength, as did our Savior when a child, to defend our principles. And we have a necessity to be afflicted because we're prideful, right? Because we're just like Israel coming out of Egypt, right? We're just like them wandering, and we've been growing. We've been growing in strength, persecuted and smitten. I think more is still to come. And to bear it, if patiently, until Jacob is of age. And I think this is the key. And this is what ties this into Ezra's prophecy. Then he will take care of himself.
What does it mean until Jacob is of age? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I would point to, we could look, Genesis here, I don't know, I didn't look up that scripture reference, but to me, when Jacob is of age, it means he's full grown, it means he's gathered, it means Jacob is again restored to the earth. Talking about the restoration of the 10 tribes and the gathering of Israel as covenanted and promised by the Lord in the last days in preparation for the second coming. The same thing that President Nelson is saying was what? The most important thing and work we can be engaged in right now at this junction, at this crossroads of the church history and the world history and our nation's history, because Elder Ballard has said that, right? We are at this giant crossroads, and we are about to see Jacob come of age, right?
Those of the birthright, essentially.
Yes, those of the covenant. So those who have and will and want to make covenants with the Lord will join. And this will be the closing of the time of the Gentiles, right? When this happens. And this is what we're watching. We're watching the rejection of the gospel by the Gentiles, and ultimately it will be taken and withdrawn from them. And we'll see in Ezra's Eagle how that might come to pass a bit. All right, so this was from, think about that, on the day he died, writing this. And everyone wants to say, like, well, why isn't the church out there speaking about it? Well, Ezra Taft Benson did. He did for a long time, and he received a lot of flack, and a lot of members of the church rejected him and called him a false prophet, right? Or out of touch, especially after World War II, when he was still harping on it. But when he became the president of the church, there was a marked shift. Everybody thought he was going to talk about conspiracy the whole time, but what did he do? He focused like a laser on the Book of Mormon. Why? Because it is a main theme in the Book of Mormon. And this is what he says and continues here in A Witness and a Warning, right? And I'm looping around, I'm sorry, but America is also the place, where he appeared to Joseph. It's a consecrated land, blah, blah, blah. All right. Uh-oh. Okay, this consecrated land has been placed under the everlasting decree of God. That decree is recorded in the sacred Book of Mormon, a new witness for Christ. It's a choice land above all other. Okay, we talked about that. The eventful destiny of America has also been revealed to God's prophets. To Joseph Smith, the Lord revealed that the whole of America is Zion itself from north to south. This fits in with my cosmic stuff and what I'm talking about, that when these changes start to happen and all of America is cleansed, it's because there will be a planetary catastrophe that helps enable these changes. It helps enable the waters to roll to the north. They will rise. They will heave their bounds, right? The earth will shake. There will be an earthquake. All these things will accompany this giant restoration of America.
That's a very significant quote that I see, though. The whole of America is Zion itself from north to south. All of it.
Yes.
That's incredible.
And I think we forget that sometimes, or here in America especially, we get hyper focused on America, and that's it. But it is this entire continent. It is the Western Hemisphere, and I believe as the Earth tilts, like I mentioned in the Daniel video, that part of the catastrophic events of the Second Coming and the restoration of a paradisical state to this Earth, right, like a millennial state, that it will involve the Earth turning over on its side and the American continent becoming the North Pole or becoming the top, and what will be on the bottom? Especially as the waters recede and all becomes one land, it will be the old kingdom. It'll be like Iran. It'll be old Babylon that will be at the South Pole when you have the earth turn like that. Okay, so it's crazy when you look at the parallels of how the earth's about to turn. And when this change happens, now I'm just tangenting on my with my cosmic stuff here. So this is a little interlude, a little freestyle. But when that change happens, I see that this is where America is cut off from the rest of the world. The Antichrist is forced out. This is the end of Ezra's Eagle prophecy. You will see a lion come in and chase the Antichrist out of America, and they won't be able to return. And this will fulfill a lot of the scriptures that say that they will be terrified of them in the north, right? When the 10 tribes return from the north, and God shows himself to cleanse America and all of Zion itself, and America and Zion begin, and the millennium begins in America with the cleansing of the church body first, and America. Then those in Babylon, they won't be able to access us. The waters will go up and protect us. I bet there will be angels and plasma and all kinds of crazy stuff where they're not going to be able to go in. But the Jews, they won't come. They will all run to Jerusalem. And a lot of the tribes as well, they will run to Jerusalem for protection as well. And all of the fury of the Antichrist and Babylon at that point then converges on Jerusalem. Then you have what everybody wants to jump to in terms of the desolation of abomination, where you have the entire of Jerusalem surrounded by the world, and the prophecies of the Rothschilds running back to Jerusalem with the world in tow and all that stuff. When the Antichrist is chased out, the Rothschilds run. The central banks go with them. All the money as well, right? That's when we see the Babylon entirely and the Antichrist turn on Jerusalem. That's when you see the two messengers sent out, the two witnesses that go and help protect Jerusalem during these times, the two prophets, right, that everybody speculates about. And who are they going to? And Bruce McConkie said that it will be two elders of our church. And while that's true, right? Well, guess what? When we have all those tribes return, it's going to be one church. So it could be anybody. It could be anybody that gets sent there. It doesn't have to be an apostle or a prophet like we think right now in 2021. That's my perspective, at least, my opinion.
Yeah,
okay?
Same.
So, all right, moving on in here. So he's saying further, the Lord declared that this land to be the place of the New Jerusalem, which should come down out of heaven, the holy sanctuary of the Lord. I'm going to jump ahead. Read this whole thing, okay? Because it provides a lot of what I'm talking about in terms of, okay, here we go. In terms of what I'm talking about
him. A warning by Ezra Taft Benson.
Yes, a witness and a warning by Ezra Taft Benson, where he identifies the secret combinations that is seeking to overthrow all kingdoms in the world, and that is here in America, here amongst ourselves. Like we've just read these scriptures in Doctrine and Covenants, where we hear of wars and rumors of wars in far-off lands, but ye know not the hearts of men in your own land, right? Like this is what he's talking about. He pointed to him, and everybody mocked and laughed him, and now they just ignore him. Like it's over. World War II happened, and all that stuff doesn't count. We don't need to care about Ezra Taft Benson anymore. He said, "It is well to ask, what system established secret works of darkness to overthrow nations by a violent revolution? Who blasphemy proclaimed the aesthetic doctrine that God made us not? Satan works through human agents. We need only to look to some of the ignoble characters in human history who were contemporary to the restoration of the gospel to discover fulfillment of Isaiah's prophecy. I refer to the infamous founders of communism and others who follow in their tradition. Communism introduced into the world a substitute for true religion. It is a counterfeit to the gospel. The false prophets of communism predict a utopian society." This is what I'm talking about a new Atlantis. The occult people behind the communist faces that everybody knows and talks about, like the Karl Marxes, and I'm telling you, they are puppets. They are puppets of other ideologues behind them, worse ideologues that have a bigger plan. And communism is a mechanism for these people. And they're the ones that want this utopian New Jerusalem in a corrupt manner, in an inverted manner, to what we know and see and are seeing from a prophet of God declared to us now, that America will be Zion and the Lord will return to it and cleanse it, not these crony, money-hungry, self-entitled elites, right? But this is what he's saying. The false prophets of communism predict a utopian society. This, they proclaim, will only be brought about as capitalism and free enterprise are overthrown, private property is abolished, the family as a social unit eliminated, all classes abolished, all governments overthrown, and communal ownership of property in classless, stateless society established. Now, if the critical race theory and all the internal fighting that's going on right now isn't evidence that this is active and alive and there are active measures on us as a nation right now, you should have alarm bells ringing.
Given?
Goodness gracious.
Does it say?
I don't know, man.
I guess in the 80s, but still, man, you look at everything you said today and wow.
Yeah, okay. So I'm beating a dead horse if I continue to read this. There is so much evidence that you just have to dismiss if you want to ignore this, right? And that's the position I'm at, that I'd rather put my stake in the prophets. I'd rather say Ezra Taft Benson wasn't off his rocker. In fact, I can see how it applies to us today, right? And that's where I'm coming at this from. All right, I'm going to close this one out. Now, another talk, and this one I think there aren't as many. Yeah, there's only a few quotes here that I want to mention. So here this is another talk that you should read from Ezra Taft Benson called Civic Standards for the Faithful Saints. And it's this one where the text is different than if you watch it on video. On video, he makes specific book recommendations, namely The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen and None Dare Call It Conspiracy. There's a pamphlet on the Constitution and Communism that was written by David O. McKay, another president and prophet of the church in the 1900s that we're just going to ignore, right? And it speaks to these same things. So he says here, just as the church today could point out many threats to peace, prosperity, and the spread of God's work, but it has singled out the greatest threat as the godless conspiracy. There is no conspiracy theory in the Book of Mormon. It is a conspiracy fact. Then Moroni speaks to us this day and says, "Wherefore the Lord commandeth you, when ye shall see these things come among you, that ye shall awake to a sense of your awful situation because of this secret combination which shall be among you." The Book of Mormon further warns that whatsoever nation shall uphold secret combinations to get power and gain until they shall spread over the nation, behold, they shall be destroyed. down further. There is no question but that as people of the free world, we are increasingly upholding many of the evils of the adversary today. By court edict, godless conspirators can run for government office, teach in our schools, hold office in labor unions, work in our defense plants, serve in our merchant marines, and as a nation, we are helping to underwrite many evil revolutionaries in our country. Now, we are assured that the church will remain on the earth until the Lord comes again, but at what price? Man, okay. So I'm not going to get into the rest. Read the rest of these things, okay? There's so much prophetic power behind this. And isn't it ironic that it's Ezra Taft Benson that's tying directly and pointing to a connection to Ezra of old, right? Here in this old prophecy. So let's get into it, okay? Actually, I'm going to pause the video just for a second. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back and jump right into it.
And I want to say before we continue that we've talked about a lot of different ideas and entities. There's people, organizations, groups, ideas, countries, etc., that you might not have heard before, perhaps maybe heard reference, but don't really know the full details on, or different events, whether it's in cosmology or the planet. And these are things that we're going to talk about later that we're going to touch up upon. And as we discuss these, it really makes everything fall into place. And as the big picture develops, it's something that really kind of testifies the truth of these things.
Right. And I can be a bit schizophrenic in that. So I apologize. But just know we'll loop around. We'll have another episode where maybe we talk for an hour on, let us know. Let us know which things you would like us to talk about. And then we can prepare and rant about it. Okay. So we're going to start. And this is the verse. I just want to read at least the verse here that I had highlighted. I didn't know how many I'd highlighted, but so like I mentioned at the beginning, Ezra is having a series of 7 visions over a span of time. And in between to have these visions, he's going on these like long fasts of like days at a time and only eating specific things. The angel gives him very specific directions that he has to do. And he separated himself from the people, from those. And he's alive at the same time as Daniel, and essentially during like the Babylonian captivity. He ultimately gets permission to lead a group back to Jerusalem as well. And so he's kind of like one of these last prophets during another time of transition and chaos. So he has a lot of these dreams because he wants to give the people hope. He wants to give himself hope. He needs hope himself. And so this angel who's been ministering to him, Uriel, gives him some dreams. And this next one, here's how he describes it. He says, "And so shall the highest shew thee visions of the high things, which the Most High will do unto them that dwell upon the earth in the last days. So I slept that night, and another, like as he commanded me." So this foreshadowing that Ezra's Eagle prophecy coming up next is an interpretation for the last days. So something much into the future. And here it is. Ezra sleeps and he says, and again, Menno, just interrupt me at any point when it gets confusing or you want to make a point or clarify, and we'll just kind of roll through this, okay?
Sounds good.
Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. So I started to kind of just keep track in your mind. Here's this eagle right here, 12 feathered wings. And when I first read this, I was a bit confused because he interchanges the word wings for feathers all throughout. But when you just take them for feather means wing and wing means feather, but it can also like be a right side of the eagle versus a left side of the eagle.
It has 2 wings, but then it has 12 feathered wings.
Yes, exactly. So 2 wings, one on each side. But it says that there are 12 feathers on the wings and 3 heads. So here we go. So these are the characters so far, and I've kind of got them written here. And I'll just say up front, the 3 heads are essentially the secret combinations, because at first in this prophecy, they're sleeping, right? They're later represented by specific rulers, though, and you'll see in this verse here that they were preserved for the last. That's what this is in reference to. So just throwing that out, and kind of if you're looking at this at the same time, here's how we go. So verse 1, "Then saw I a dream, and behold, there came from the sea an eagle which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth, and all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small." So we have new character introduced. First, verse 2 is talking about how this eagle, which is a kingdom, spreads her wings or in dominion over all of the earth, okay, and gathers pretty much everybody under their respect. And this is America, okay? This is the United States of America in our days. And you have to admit the world respected us, and it has respected us for a long time as this pillar of freedom and righteousness, and et cetera, et cetera. With things going on in the world today, like that's debatable, all right? If you have the presentism attitude. But okay, that's what that verse is. So this next part is important, and why I've highlighted it different here, that out of these 12 grew other feathers, and they're short. Okay, so you had originally these 12 ones, and then you have, it doesn't number yet how many, but you have some contrary feathers that grow out of it or add to it. So you have additional feathers. But their heads were at rest. These guys are sleeping. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue. Moreover, behold, I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers and reigned upon earth, and over them that dwelt therein. So more just setting up this kingdom. And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon the earth. And I beheld, and lo, the eagle rose upon her talons, and spake to her feathers, saying, Watch not all at once, sleep every one in his own place, and watch by course. So this is finally where the sleeping eagle heads, as the eagle was getting established in verses 1 through 7 here, right? And this would be, you could consider this 1776 and the founding, and them leaving England across the waters with many peoples and many different, the melting pot that America became, right? They came here with the dream, and then it became corrupt here as soon as these eagle heads, they stand up and they say, okay, my feathers, these 12 that I had, and now these contraries that aren't quite numbered yet, I'm going to have you stand up, and every one of you are going to reign by course in your place, sequentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the feathers are going to rule in order.
Right.
Right.
All right. But let the heads be preserved for the last, right? So these heads are going to rule at some point, but after the feathers set things up. Okay, so the feathers are going to do the slow, gradual, dirty work for these heads to take final position. And I beheld, and lo, the voice went not out of her heads, but from the midst of the body. So the voice of the people is the body of the eagle, right? So these guys are conspiring in the back, and the main voice is coming supposedly from the people, or the perception is from the people, but they're being puppeted by these guys in the back. And I numbered her contrary feathers, and lo, behold, there were 8 of them. So 8 plus 12, now we've got a total number of 20 feathers identified, okay? So you got 23 rulers that are being predicted here in the vision so far. 20 feathers, 12 normal ones, and 8 contrary or short ones, and 3 heads. Okay, so 23 rulers. And I looked, and behold, the right side there arose one feather and reigned over all the earth. So the first one on the right side rises and ruled over all the earth. And we'll read, and then we'll come back to that. And so it was that when it rained, the end of it came, and the place thereof appeared no more. So it came up, it did its time, and then it left. So the next following stood up and reigned, and had a great time. Not just a happy time, but a long time. And it happened that when it rained, the end of it came also, like as the first, so that it appeared no more. Then there came a voice unto it, and said, Hear thou that hast borne rule over the earth so long. This I say unto thee, before thou beginnest to appear no more. There shall none after thee attain unto thy time, neither unto the half thereof. So he says, before thou beginnest to appear. So while you're still in your presidency, I'm declaring this unto you, that nobody after you shall attain unto thy time, neither the half thereof. They're not going to get elected to half the terms that you did. So this is where we identify FDR as the second feather in the sequence. Okay, that's where this picture starts to make sense. That's the placeholder. He served.
FDR serves 4 terms, and they've made a law here at this point, right, where you can only serve for the next 2 terms.
Yes,
half.
Exactly, and that law was I think I have it over here. Hold on, the 22nd Amendment. I took constitutional law a long time ago. Oh yeah, here it is, Constitution, 22nd Amendment, and here the section 2, or no, here at the end. Watch. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once, blah, 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 blah. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of president when the article was proposed. So they're saying, this doesn't apply to you, FDR, but after you, that this is going to go in place. That's exactly what this says, and it matches up perfectly with what's being declared here by the voice that speaks. And I would say it's the voice of the people through an amendment, a constitutional amendment where this happens. And that's why you have the voice of the people speaking unto the feathers like, hey, you're not going to do that anymore. So then after him, the third arose. And
why don't we go back to the picture really quick? I've got another question here.
Yeah.
So it's a very convenient to have the FDR as a second feather because it's an indisputable reference point, right?
Right.
But as far as the reason why it starts with Herbert Hoover, so why does he begin it?
Okay.
To presidents before that.
So I think this could be another tangent, right? This could be another video where we talk for an
Okay,
hour.
which I was very worried about it.
Right, which I'm not going to do. I'm going to pull back. I'm going to pull
Keep
back
it
on this
short.
one.
Yeah, keep it short, but short answer.
But Herbert Hoover was a founding member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR. And if you haven't heard of that, look it up, Google it, whatever it is. Like this is the start of the secret combination in America identified by Ezra Benson. Okay, because he pointed to read the book called None Dare Call It a Conspiracy by Gary Allen. In that book, Gary Allen describes the secret combination that has control of the presidency of the United States as the CFR. That it started as the CFR, and then once they kind of had a little bit too much heat or publicity to them, just like all secret societies and conspiratorial groups before them, they shatter and reorganize as a different thing, or they shatter and delegate power to others, puppets below them, so that they further obfuscate their line of authority, or who's in charge, or who's connected to who, right? So, but at the time of this, when this conspiracy is placed finally into the presidency to really start to manipulate the laws of the land for this communist utopian idea of the devil, right? Herbert Hoover is the first guy, and he's a founding member and plays an important role, especially in the war rituals going on at the time. Hoover Dam, there's a funny story that ties into this totally conspiratorially as well, and a lot of the things he did. Man, it really does.
On top of that, there's a lot of things he did that contributed to the Great Depression,
yes,
which obviously expanded a lot of federal powers and corruption, etc.
And from the conspiratorial paradigm of history that I come from here and that I'm presenting, the Great Depression wasn't some natural event. It was caused and induced by these central bankers that were establishing a stronger stranglehold on the government. Because that's what the central banks are in business to do, is to control governments through finance. Right? And so they have to do that through catastrophe, through collapse, through war, through chaos. And then they can reorganize with, hey, I've got the funds to build you back up, right? That's exactly how it works. And so, yes, Hoover played a huge part in the Great Depression, a lot of those collapses and things like that. So, again, I think we can go on another tangent and maybe hit a little harder on like Mystery Babylon.
Another day.
Yeah, and the central banking system and things like that for another time. But yeah.
Creature of Jekyll Island and stuff like that, right?
Yes. Okay, back to the prophecy. Or any other questions? I think pretty clear to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then arose the third, and reigned as the other before, and appeared no more also. So with it went all the residue one after another, as that every one reigned and then appeared no more. So they all just, good little soldiers in a line. Then I beheld, and lo, in the process of time, the feathers that followed stood up upon the right side, that they might rule also. And some of them ruled, but within a while they appeared no more. Okay, so then it's saying it switched over to another side of the wing. And this is where it can be a bit confusing because it doesn't directly go into these short feathers. It doesn't describe the short feathers right away. It just gives a general, hey, these guys, they reigned on this side, and then another side of rulers reigned. Or where do I have that? I have the other picture. Maybe I don't. Okay, so there's another wing. I have too many windows open. That's the problem. Oh, here it is. Okay. So there's another wing that goes to rise. All of these ones, though, are short feathers on this other side. And the prophecy then goes into this. But this is what it's referencing, that it goes from one side to the other.
But this is also something where, because it says that they ruled no more, that if we are interpreting this correctly, that Trump's not coming back.
Exactly. And that was my position from the beginning as well. And there's a lot of talk like, oh, he's going to be reinstated if the election stuff, is proven fraudulent and like it appears that there's so much evidence that there is, but are the corruption, the people installed by corruption right now, are they going to let it get to the surface? There's got to be some conflict and it feels like it's coming to a head. But yeah, I don't think he's coming back because of the language in here that they appeared no more. And it'll speak specifically to Trump here a bit later. But okay, so for some of them were set up but ruled not. After this I looked, and behold, 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers. Okay, so here's where it recaps the first wing, the first side, where there are 12 feathers set up and 2 little feathers. So going back to the picture, this one, because there are 14 in total. That's why the number goes to 14 here. So you had the 2 little ones and the 12 on one side. So now it goes in. And there was no more upon the eagle's body, but 3 heads that rested and 6 little wings. So there's the other ones. These ones, the 6 little wings, the 6 little feathers. So only the 3 heads and the 6 little feathers remain after the right side is over. Then I saw also 2 little feathers divided themselves from the 6 and remained under the head that was upon the right side, for the 4 continued in their place. Okay, so this is where you have the introduction of a new sinister character. These are two short feathers that pretended to be on one side, but they were secretly playing for the bad team, essentially. And they will be the last two feathers to take office before what the prophecy says, that the eagle is burned. So, I mean, let your imagination wander. And I beheld, and lo, the feathers that were under the wing thought to set themselves up and to have the rule. So all these on the on the left side, all of these feathers on this side, they thought to set themselves up and rule in their own way. I mean, we could see that with Trump, right? He was going to do things Trump's way, right? Now we have Biden in office, and it seems that he's a catastrophe in himself, right? Like there's definitely some friction in his presidency against the powers that be, and even the media is starting to question him. And when the media starts to question him, you can know that these eagle heads are definitely looking to cast a shadow on whoever they want to cast a shadow on. So we have this being set up where these little short feathers thought to rule and reign unto themselves. And lo, I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly appeared no more. So this is Trump. This one's Trump right here. So this is the start of the short feathers. This is why they start blue. So this is the start of the 6 little feathers on the opposite side. So Trump was set up, but shortly appeared no more. So he's removed from office, just like we saw him. Didn't finish his second term, which if the voice of the people was honored, he would have served a second term. And what did Dallin H. Oaks emphasize in his Constitution talk? That one of the main principles of the Constitution was that the voice of the people be held in government. And it's obviously not right now. So here we have quite the conspiracy to pull him out at that point there. All right. And the second sooner away than the first, this would be Biden. That he's going to be removed quicker than Trump was removed. And
it's going to last less than 4 years, right? Trump served his 4 years, but Biden's going to, according to this, be shorter than that.
Right. So the maximum time frame that we're looking at for Biden to be removed would be right up to those for that 4-year mark, like 3 years and 11 months or something. That it would still technically fit, right? Just saying, if we want to be technical and look at the long game, that could happen.
Yeah.
But as with what's going on in Afghanistan right now and everything else, I mean, one could see a scenario where he's out much sooner. We'll just put it that way. And it could be for a number of reasons. For the 25th Amendment, right? He's not mentally all there, like a lot of people have been alluding to and suspecting, and even Trump joked about before he left office, when they were pointing to him and forcing him to take doctors' appointments to prove that he was healthy and sane, right? He said, be careful what you wish for. This is going to come back to bite you. I feel like it's almost like a movie we're watching, and that was a setup, right? Like the cheesy foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Biden's gone before the first, and now this is where something crazy happens. And I beheld, and lo, the two that remained thought also in themselves to reign. So they thought they were going to get set up. And when they thought so, behold, there awakened one of the heads that were at rest, namely, it that was in the midst, so the middle one, for that was greater than the two other heads. So the one in the middle wakes up. And then I saw that the two other heads were joined to it. So then you could see that they were bound to each other, by oath and covenant or whatever it was. I don't know. That's how I'm looking at it and seeing it. And behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. All right. So these two, right after Biden, so whatever happens to Biden to get him removed, the next two that think to reign, so it'd be Kamala Harris and whoever is next in line, right? Pelosi or who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? They get plucked up. They get taken out by one of these secret combinations who basically identifies themselves. And it says, but this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression. And it had governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. So this one exercises some real unrighteous dominion over the world, and he puts the world in fear. Right? This is the moment where peace is taken from the earth, I would say, that we're kind of being prepared for with the church.
So just to kind of zoom out for a second. So in your highlights, blue is a right wing, right?
It's a short feather, just period.
It's short feather. Okay, they're short feathers. Now the red represents the heads.
Yes,
right.
And their actions, right?
Talking about the first, second, and third head, what they're going to do individually and how they're going to end.
Right. And
Perfect.
So after this first head awakens, and now I think this would be a good point to bring in Michael Rush's little addition. Let me see if I have that. Where is it? Okay, so here's a supplement. I snipped this from Michael Rush's video on Ezras Eagle. He put out a video right after the election of Donald Trump because everybody was hitting him up like, well, it's false now, right? What do we do now? And he was like, look, and he explains it. I highly recommend watching that one. It's great. But in there, he puts up this awesome little infographic to help visualize the different presidents and where we're at. We're at this line. We're right here. We're about to have something crazy happen where it's feathers number 17 and 18 who think to reign, but then this first eagle head comes in and says, nope, eats them up, pulls them out. So either something catastrophic happens or this one swoops in by, who knows, right? Who knows what's going to happen, but we're about to witness it. That's the exciting part about this, is that we have front row seats. And our prophet of the church is excited about future times. And he says, look forward with faith. And we're praying for our leaders right now, right? So I don't think it's going to be all crazy, but definitely have some crazy times coming in. But look, Michael Rush ties these 3 eagle heads to the 3 horns of Daniel's vision as well. And when you include that and you see, you get a better idea of what these eagle heads might do in office or what they will do in office, right? And so under that interpretation, I like how he said up here that Donald Trump attacks the robbers of the people, because that's the truth. That's why everybody turned against him. No matter what you think about him, right? That's what happened, is the global apparatus turned against him. And so he's used the people as kind of a shield to join with them and give just enough truth out to expose his enemies, but keep his own things kind of under wraps as well. Okay, so this first one, it says that he dies in pain in his head. And I think he's poisoned or something happens. I can't remember.
Well, on top of that, but too, before we really talk about how he dies, we look at what he does to the right of that. And it says he attacks the Middle East and others immediately after taking office. His kingdom has a stigma. So this is where the current events of Joe Biden pulling out of Afghanistan really gets interesting, because you can see how this all connects and how this could accelerate very quickly.
Yeah, and especially with the Abraham Accords that Donald Trump had completed right before the end of his presidency, where it's like, oh, we're having this peace in the Middle East, and then as soon as Biden transitions over and the globalists again take control, or another one thinks to reign for himself and kind of jump in on that same globalist agenda, right? You see this push right back to the Middle East as a source for the military-industrial complex and their nefarious means to all of a sudden be alive and well again. And I mean, Trump was bombing on the Taliban and bombing on all of the terrorists, and now here we have a situation where you could see, if Biden gets removed and if things continue to escalate there in the Middle East, this eagle can jump in and likely it might be some military commander or something, right? That says, nope, this is what happened. Joe Biden's in corrupt with the Chinese, and these 2 people are also corrupt with this and that, and the Russians, blah, blah. And so they come in as like military commander, man, saying, I'm the patriot, I'm the one. But they immediately go and just bomb the crap out of Afghanistan or something, right?
Also, to be clear, this is where the head number 1 would still have to come after 17 and 18 feathers, though, right?
Right.
Well, they could obviously try to force it in numerous ways, where Biden's senile, he has to be forced out, Kamala Harris comes in, etc. So it could all happen very quickly, but she'll be good there.
This is why I think the fraud, the revelation of fraud, is probably the best way, because these eagle heads took note from Donald Trump for sure, right? They saw how he ingrained himself with the people and how he and I think they're going to mimic that. They're going to try and you're going to see a lot of infiltration psyops into the conservative Donald Trump people, and you're already seeing it with a lot of things going on, right? This is the new crop that they're looking to totally prioritize and turn to their benefit. But this is a scary moment, I think, for all of us. And now, hopefully, this prolongs out, right? Like, we have more time, and this isn't for a while. But if we're looking at things like, I hope, don't know what to say. Let's read on. All right. After this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. So this is the moment where he's poisoned on his bed. But there remained the 2 heads, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth, and over those that dwelt therein. And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it as it was upon the left side. So now these heads just go at each other. Boom. The one on the right eats the one on the left. Then I heard a voice which said, let's go back then to Michael Rush's, his integration here of Daniel's description of the horns, where eagle head number 2 is killed by number 3. We just read that. That's what happens. The right head eats the left head. But this number 2 that comes in, that takes over and likely poisoned or killed number 1, he removes the stigma that this first eagle head kind of put over the world, that they knew that he took office in a stinky way. They knew that what he did in the Middle East was totally corrupt, right? And he ends this, I think, by, like I said, following the mold of Donald Trump, maybe ingraining himself to the people and pretending to be the good guy by removing the stigma, ends the war, returns to America, says, we're going to build back better, make America great again, kind of thing. And then he gets murdered by Eagle 3, the third head, the one on the right. In Daniel's book, it says that this third horn raises taxes for the glory of the kingdom and then dies quickly. Like in a matter of days after raising the taxes of the people, he's removed from the seat. This is also reminiscent of the Book of Mormon as well, leading up to the advent of Jesus Christ in 3 Nephi 11, where you have this secret combinations that are vying for the government and judgment seat, murdering one another, even their own brothers, right?
All these different corrupt entities murdering each other is very reminiscent of Helaman 5, right? Where you just have constant sabotage.
Yes. Stratagem and conspiring one another. But it's magnified.
I do want to know, though, and perhaps this is also a conversation for another day, but it says head 3 will be killed by the Antichrist. Do you think that the Antichrist will appear publicly before this, or do you think that will kind of be where he really comes out?
I'm open on that one. I don't know. I think I am of
it is largely speculation there.
Right. I am of the opinion that he will enter the scene in a magnificent way, in a way that's going to dazzle the world. So,
an alien,
right? Yeah, you know, like he's going to claim
possible.
Extraterrestrial origin, and he's going to have magic and sorcery to kind of prove it, right? That he has command over the elements, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's revealed himself yet. I think he's also been described in all kinds of other prophecies as he's going to look very distinct. That women will kind of despise how he looks. He's going to be ugly. Right. So if you're this person that's positioning yourself to take over by stratagem at the last second, after they've consolidated all the power, he's going to watch them build everything up essentially and consolidate all the power as they kill each other and stack all their cards on each other's decks. And then he's going to come in and take the whole deck. Do you get it? Like that's what he does. So I don't think he's revealed himself yet, but I'm open to be wrong on that. Like people are like, it's Elon Musk. He's got the mark on his head and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know, right? He's going to go to space. He says he's a spaceman. And I've heard that. I've heard George Soros is the Antichrist. I don't believe any of that. I think this person will be, he will appeal to the masses. I mean, this is going to be the guy that deceives even the very elect with the things that he will do. Okay. And the people that aren't prepared or even looking at this stuff, even in the church, they are going to be confused about all of this as it starts to collapse and everything. And the church continues its ecclesiastical position, right, of maximize church objectives. That's their goal as an ecclesiastical organization right now. We are subject to these slave masters, and we have to be, and we have to act in good faith, and we have to do what's right for the covenants and for the gathering. That's the most important thing, right? This is not about politics. This is about the covenant of gathering Israel and these secret combinations of the devil who are building an anti-New Jerusalem. They're building an anti-Zion, a Babylon, right? A mystery Babylon. The whore is riding upon it. This is all that, right? That's what I want to focus on. But that there is a good ending. I think I had an ominous moment here realizing like this might happen soon. Like we are going to witness this if this is true. And I believe it's true. But there is the marvelous blessings and miracles and wonders that our prophet has promised us in recent conferences, where he said the Lord will perform some of his greatest miracles between now and when he comes again. Well, he's going to be coming again, according to these prophecies here, very soon. Any questions before I continue? Let me get a drink. Okay. We ended here where the eagle heads had devoured each other. Now, at this is the point where there's a rebuking that happens. This is the good news, right? This is the amazing part of the prophecy that Ezra wants to focus on as well when he's asking the angel. And his next vision of a man who breathes fire and all these things, it has directly to do with this portion. So this is like the end cap of the vision and the great part where he says, "Then I heard a voice which said unto me, Look before thee and consider the thing that thou seest. And I beheld, and lo, as it were a roaring lion chased out of the wood. And I saw that he sent out a man's voice unto the eagle, and said, Hear thou, I will talk with thee, and the highest shall say unto thee." So he's speaking for the Lord. Art not thou it that remainest of the four beasts, whom I made to reign in my world, that the end of their times might come through them? And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the world compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. It's a little weird English, but he's talking about, aren't you that fourth beast? Aren't you that last one that Daniel saw? he says, "For the earth hast thou not judged with truth. You've lied to them. You've deceived them. You've taken your seat by corruption and conspiracy. For thou hast afflicted the meek. Thou hast hurt the peaceable. Thou hast loved liars, and destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and hast cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest
So
hath..." Go ahead.
Just to make sure this is clear here. So who is the fourth beast, and who is this speaking to?
So Michael Rush will interpret this, and I tend to agree with this, that once the last eagle head is here, you have a devolution happening in America where the government's falling apart and you have the Antichrist swooping in to take control of it, right? At this point, a lion comes roaring out of the north or out of the woods, right? And speaks unto them. So the idea is that this is Christ, and obviously it's through a messenger. Might be some allude that it might be Christ himself, right? Okay, so this is where there's a lot of speculation and disagreement. I keep an open mind, and so I understand or see all of them. I don't really choose one. I'm willing to watch and wait and see, right?
Yeah.
But I like to know like what people are saying. So some say that this is Christ himself. Some say it's John the Revelator leading the 10 tribes in before. Some say that this will be the resurrected Joseph Smith reclaiming, avenging his martyr and coming to out the government essentially for the ones who killed him essentially. So that there's that. There's Moroni that could be coming back again to proclaim, as the angel coming back. There's a whole lot of. Some think it might be the prophet, even the church getting up and speaking.
And
in
this
conference.
is the person speaking, but they're speaking to the fourth beast.
Yes,
right?
they're speaking to the government essentially, right? If we take the beast as a government and a kingdom,
which in this case is the Antichrist, right?
Yes, he's taken kingship because these eagle heads, they serve almost like kings. They are coalescing the government into something different because guess what? It wasn't working before the way it was. Look, there was so much corruption and it was easy for this and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to establish a new way that's more akin to what the Zion society will be when Christ returns. They're trying to also move towards this monarchical rule from one seat. From Babylon type of government. That's what the Antichrist comes in and swoops up. This consolidated type of government. You get it? So I don't know the answer for sure, but those are some of the options. That he's speaking to the government of the eagle, essentially. Whoever's in charge at that point, whether it still be these heads and this is an this is an injection before all of the wings have served their time, or if this is at the end when the Antichrist is controlling the final two little broken wings. Okay, and it'll get to that as well in the next section, I think, where it talks about the broken wings and the Antichrist a bit more. So this is kind of an insert into it, where this lion comes roaring out and basically calls out all the corruption, calls out the conspiracy. This is in our Doctrine and Covenants as well, that soon their lies and secret acts will be shouted from the rooftops. We will know them. They'll be revealed. It'll be like that Nephi 3 moment where he's the one on the garden tower basically predicting, hey, this is what happened, and the Lord told me that he murdered him. You know what I mean? And we're going to have that. We're going to have that on a massive scale. And I think this might be a moment too where, like President Nelson has promised, that it'll be obvious that the Lord is speaking through our church, that we will be on this side of this roaring lion, that they will be here to side with us, essentially, that they're our backup. And that's brings a lot of peace when you understand and study this prophecy in its full context, and you don't just focus on so much the negative. Okay. He says, therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also hath looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. And therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, that all the earth may be refreshed. That's a key word for the millennium being refreshed as well in my mind. And may return, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. So this is where I believe the beginning of the casting out and cleansing of America. And this is where, the 10 tribes return, I believe, and you're going to have translated beings returning, Adam on Diamond. These kind of things are going to be happening around this point when this is all breaking down. Okay. Any questions after chapter 11 there? No. All right. And it came to pass, whiles the lion spake these words unto the eagle I saw, and behold, the head that remained and the 4 wings appeared no more. And the 2 went unto it and set themselves up to reign, and their kingdom was small and filled with uproar.
So I apologize. I was getting a drink real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So it jumps back in here. the four wings, this would be from Donald Trump to whoever's after Kamala Harris in the line of succession, or whoever shows up to claim the throne essentially and gets rejected. Those are the four that appear no more.
This is like we said, where it's a little bit confusing because they're using wings instead of feathers here.
Right.
But on that wing with the 6 feathers, we have the 4 and the 2.
Right. And it jumps back and forth. And okay, if anyone's actually experienced a vision or a really vivid dream, right? Or watch any movie, okay? Watch any movie and see how they portray memories or jumping between things, right? Where you're seeing things happen and maybe in many different perspectives. And it might jump from thing to thing, right? A lot of visions are like that. A lot of dreams are like that. The Tree of Life visions like that. It's not describing a complete timeline that's chronological to a T. No, it's describing different events and sequences that make sense to get the point or principle across that's being taught. So keep that in mind too with all of these, that I don't know, you just got to take a faithful approach to it. And look, this is pretty obvious though. This isn't like this is way up for dispute or anything what's happening here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just saying I take that cautious approach to everything. I'm not like throwing I hope you understand. Anyways, and I saw, and behold, they appeared no more. So these two that went up to set themselves, either the short Antichrist type kingdoms, and this is where it does get a little fuzzy even for me, where Michael Rush, I don't know how the Antichrist is administering the government at this point. I don't know if he's in control of these two little feathers and having them like split the country and trying to divide like a north and a south again. I've seen certain diagrams of that's how it'll be drawn up, or there will be some type of division, or if he's using them as his own little puppets, like his Democrat versus Republican mouthpieces. I don't know. Or if he is behind them in sequence, like it's two presidents.
This is where I think it's important to state that obviously we're not claiming to have all the answers, that
right.
know the full truth, right? And at the very beginning, I was saying, look, as you explore everything going on, you'll see the truth of this. And this isn't to say that everything we're saying is right, but it's that, as you go through, as you seek it yourself, that you can find the truth within this. And that really, I think that when prophecy is fulfilled, that it was fulfilled. Like there won't be question.
Right.
Right. And so this is where, especially as things go in the future, that instead of being in the dark here, that we'll have an understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. And I'm just of the mind where I like to explore all the possibilities to see them at first. Like I can't make a decision on which ones I like or my favorites or that I think fit best with the scriptures if I haven't heard them all, right? And so this is why I go to I go on these long tangents and rants, and I apologize, but like that's where my mind's going. I'm not saying these to cast doubt or anything. I'm saying we can make faithful connections, even exploring all of these different speculative ideas about it. We can see it in a faithful light and how it might happen. And by seeing that, we can be better prepared for the future, no matter what comes. We can just have more confidence and in knowing more probabilities, essentially, is what I'm saying. Our computers work that way. The more probability, the more data you have, the better your analysis.
Okay. Right.
All right, so here's the end. This is the scary part of the dream, where these two went to rule and set themselves up to reign. Their kingdom was small and filled with uproar. Then they appeared no more, and the whole body of the eagle was burnt, so that the earth was in great fear. I mean, that's ominous, right? What is that? Is that nuclear war, like has been seen in other visions, where certain cities, especially the ones that we're reading about, are being named in the Doctrine and Covenants as being condemned, essentially, right? Like, are these the ones that, and those are the same cities, by the way, that are seen to be exploding in a lot of the Native American visions and dreams that you go read about. If you ever want to study like Native American apocalypse stuff, it's amazing. Yeah. It's crazy how they all kind of line up. Then awakened I out of the trouble and trance of my mind, and from great fear, and said unto my spirit, Lo, this hast thou done unto me, in that thou searchest out the ways of the highest. Lo, yet I am weary in my mind, and very weak in my spirit, and little strength is there in me, for the great fear wherewith I was afflicted this night. So he was terrified of what he saw. It was a scary thing. Therefore will I now beseech the highest, that he will comfort me unto the end. So what does he do? His first instinct is to go to the Lord and to seek comfort, and not just comfort, but he asks for the interpretation, which again, I mentioned before, this is a principle taught by Joseph Smith, that when you have a vision or a dream, ask for the interpretation immediately thereof. And if you don't get one, you're not responsible to, live by it or anything, or you can just dismiss it as not being from the Lord. Okay. And I said, Lord, that bearest rule, if I have found grace before thy sight, and if I am justified with thee before many others, and if my prayer indeed be come up before thy face, comfort me then, and shew me thy servant the interpretation and plain difference of this fearful vision, that thou mayest perfectly comfort my soul. For thou hast judged me worthy to show me the last times. And he said unto me, This is the interpretation of the vision. So Ezra says, you showed me this dream. you obviously, had faith in me enough to do that. Can you show me the interpretation of it so that I might have comfort? He says, sure. The eagle whom thou sawest came up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel. Now there's no disputing it. He's connecting it directly to the vision in Daniel 7. But it was not expounded unto him. Therefore now I declare it unto thee. Behold, the days will come that there shall rise up a kingdom upon earth, and it shall be feared above all the kingdoms that were before it. All right, so here's the interpretation, and it breaks down a lot. I mean, this is going to support what we've been saying. In the same...
and this kingdom, let's just be clear here, it's two, right? So the kingdom that's going to be feared upon all kingdoms before it, this is not the U.S. now, right?
No, this is the U.S. This is because he's talking about the eagle here, that this is a kingdom that was seen by Daniel, but it wasn't expounded unto him. Because the fourth beast and Rome and all that stuff, it was kind of expounded unto him there. He's not talking about the general fourth beast kingdom in that sense so much as he's talking about the eagle specifically.
Still the eagle then. Okay,
right.
Thank you.
And so he says, in the same shall 12 kings reign, one after the other, whereof the second shall begin to reign, and shall have more time than any of the 12. And this do the 12 wings signify, which thou sawest. So they're kings or rulers over the country, just like we talked about. And these are the green ones, again, are the 12 normal length puppets.
So this is where in the last section, it gives a big picture overview of the wings and the heads, and that's going back into the left wing first.
Right.
Each individual feather.
Yes.
Perfect.
As for the voice which thou heardest speak, and that thou sawest not go out from the heads, but from the midst of the body thereof, this is the interpretation, that after the time of that kingdom there shall arise great strivings, and it shall stand in peril of failing. Nevertheless, it shall not then fall, but shall be restored again to its beginning. Okay, this is a huge promise that ties into Joseph Smith's white horse prophecy of the Constitution hanging by a thread, like I've mentioned before. That this is that. It's saying it shall stand in peril of failing. That's the same language. Nevertheless, it shall not fall, but shall be restored again to its beginning. So we're going to have the covenant restored after these heads and wicked wings get rebuked by the lion, essentially. That's when we start to restore and rebuild. And whereas thou sawest the 8 small under feathers sticking to her wings, this is the interpretation, that in him there shall arise 8 kings whose time shall be but small, and their years swift, and 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. So this is where the order gets more inserted. It gets ironed out here in the interpretation, where it was a bit convoluted in the vision portion where it's jumping around. See how it's making it a bit more sense as it's starting to lay out a timeline in the interpretation? And see the variability in this. It's not always cut and dry. Like you've got to have an open mind when you're reading prophecy, and you've got to have a spirit of faithfulness that it does make sense, right? These guys aren't just writing gibberish. It's the Lord speaking to you in a code, and it's up to you to figure it out. Okay. So 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. This would be JFK and Nixon in the first arm, or to round out the 14 figures. Yeah, right here. These are the 2 approaching the mid-time, which would be right here after, or no, it would be after Nixon was the mid-time. And I already closed Rush's infographic, but he had it there. Okay. 4 shall be kept until their end begin to approach. Those are the ones that we're experiencing right now. We already experienced 1 in Donald Trump. We're under number 2 of these 4 with President Biden. So the next 2 after him will round out those 4. But 2 shall be kept up unto the end. Those are the 2 other short feathers that set themselves up with the Antichrist in the end times.
Now, in this case, this verse right here is separating the feathers that are unique, right?
Yes.
So we have the long feathers on the right-hand side. We have 2 that are kept until the end. We have the other 4 on the right side. And on the left side, we have 2 short feathers, right? So these are the unique feathers from both wings.
Yes. Perfect. And whereas thou sawest 3 heads resting, this is the interpretation. In the last days there shall the Most High raise up 3 kingdoms and renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth. So this is, in my mind, the mystery Babylon. These are he's speaking to the principle, or what came before the 3 eagle heads, where they came from and why they were sleeping, essentially. That they were part of the global power, the occult power of mystery Babylon, essentially. And of those that dwell thereon with much oppression. Wait. In the day, let me read this again and just get reoriented. In his last days shall the Most High raise up 3 kingdoms and renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth. And of those that dwell therein with much oppression, above all those that were before them. Therefore they are called the heads of the eagle. For these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. So that's kind of ritualistic in what it's talking about here, that he's using the kingdoms of the world to wrap things up, to accelerate his work, right? They have a plan of their own, but it gets disrupted by other wicked people. And the Lord's kind of orchestrating that behind the scenes, that a house divided against itself will fall, and that's what Satan's house will always be, a house divided against itself. So I love it. Anyways, hope that makes sense. And whereas thou sawest that the great head appeared no more, it signified that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. So there's where the definition of how he dies. It's here, not in Daniel.
Okay, and this is where the poison makes more sense as well. Not that it has to be poison, but at first I was wondering, okay, could he just die in his sleep or whatever? But
maybe it's COVID. Maybe he gets COVID and dies.
Maybe he gets COVID. Like the Sigma variant.
That's right.
Zeta,
It'll be at the end of the long line of alphabet variants we are confronting.
Alpha, Gamma.
Okay, for the two that remain shall be slain with the sword. Ooh, so there's a bit more specificity when it comes to how they shall die. It's definitely assassination, it sounds like, for all three of them, though. For the sword of one shall devour the other. That's the right head going after the left. But at the last shall he fall through the sword himself. So he gets killed. And I think that's where the Antichrist ultimately takes power here. And whereas thou sawest two feathers, or maybe it's these guys that kill him first before the Antichrist. I'm not sure where that comes in, and that's where I'm saying I don't know everything. But this is where it all happens. This is where the rubber meets the road, essentially, when it comes to tribulation. And whereas thou sawest two feathers under the wings passing over the head that was on the right side, it signifieth that these are they whom the highest hath kept unto their end. This is the kingdom, the small kingdom, and full of trouble, as thou sawest. Trouble is a good key word in Daniel's visions as well that speak of the Antichrist. So I think this is where Michael Rush makes the association, in that their kingdoms are described in the same way that the Antichrist kingdom is described in Daniel's visions. Now, he goes on to describe the lion. And the lion, whom thou sawest rising up out of the wood and roaring and speaking to the eagle and rebuking her for her unrighteousness with all the words which thou hast heard, this is the anointed, which the highest hath kept for them and for their wickedness unto the end. He shall reprove them, and shall upbraid them with their cruelty. For he shall set them before him alive in judgment, and shall rebuke them and correct them. For the rest of my people shall he deliver with mercy. That's us, hopefully, the faithful, right? Those who have been pressed upon my borders, and he shall make them joyful until the coming of the day of judgment, whereof I have spoken unto thee from the beginning. This is the dream which thou sawest, and these are the interpretations. And thou only hast been meet to know this secret of the highest. Why isn't this talked about by other prophets? Well, it says right here in there, and others would, doubters would be like, well, that's convenient, right? I would throw that in too if I was making up my own vision. Well, okay, then you go, you ask the Lord, right? You cognitive dissonance through all these other points that we're making. Therefore, write all these things that thou hast seen in the book, and hide them, and teach them to the wise of the people, whose hearts thou knowest may comprehend and keep these secrets. But wait thou here thyself yet 7 more days. Okay, and so then he tells Ezra here what he must do again to receive another vision. Because he turns like Enos does in his prayer after seeing and being comforted himself for what was concerning him, he then turns his attention to his fellow men, to his neighbor, to Israel, whom he has dominion and care for right now as the high priest. And so he starts to comfort him and say, nope, I have some more to tell you if you're willing to fast, and I will show you more visions. And he does. And he sends a messenger later to tell those that were waiting that, hey, I'm still speaking with the Lord. I'll be there in a while. So it's kind of this cool interaction. I just love it. I just love how he's like on this 40-day journey into the wilderness where he's fasting and having visions and ministrations of angels in the same archetype of Christ in his 40-day journey, and in a lot of prophets who go out, to seek the Lord and end up being ministered by angels and having visions. So it fits everything, right? It doesn't seem like this is strange, and it excites me. It fits with Daniel's visions, and it adds so much insight as well as to the chaos that's going on in our world today. And it gives me comfort. It excites
me as well.
Yeah.
Like the idea, for example, of the lion being resurrected, Joseph Smith too, is very, very exciting to me. It's very cool. And like I said, this is speculation, right? I'm not going to base anything off of it, but it still is very fun to think about.
And this is a point, I think this scripture specifically, chapter 12, verse 32, is referenced in, maybe I have it right here, in our Bible dictionary, right in the back here, where it's talking about the Apocrypha. Yeah, 12:32. That's exactly that one right here, where it's talking about his anointed, And they're saying that this is in reference to Christ here, references to the Messiah, right? So what if it's not Joseph Smith, but what if it is Christ himself coming to judge the saints, essentially?
Even
right?
better.
Right.
Right.
And
Amazing.
this is why when people ask me, like, when do you think the second coming is going to happen? I'm like, which one? What are you talking about? Because in my mind, this could be it, right? It could be right before us in a number of years, and we have so many members looking so far off, thinking that so much else has to be done when they're not understanding that America and Zion here must be cleansed first before the things and crazy events in Jerusalem even get kicked off. So like Hiram Smith, or what is his name? Hiram Andrus. Hiram Andrus. I don't know. I can't remember him.
Yeah,
find him on
Andrus,
YouTube.
Yes,
find him on YouTube. He's got amazing series on this as well, speaking to the different second comings, essentially, how he visits the different people, right? And the church is the first to visit, the first to be purged of wickedness and sin, along with America. So
that's to say, before
exciting.
You have the grand entrance, the second coming, you have Christ coming to accomplish 3 missions within the church, right?
Right. So I mean, that's the end of this. Like, this is the end of the prophecy. He goes on to the next prophecy. It goes in depth about this lion more, but it describes him as a man flying upon a mountain in space. It's because into my cosmic stuff, like totally all of this, with my cosmic eye, it makes sense. And it actually references the return of the 10 tribes right here. This man who comes down from a mountain and breathes fire on the wicked, on the multitudes who prepared to fight him as he came down. He just destroys them, spitting fire out of his mouth. And he comes down on a mountain, and he calls to him a peaceable multitude. This peaceable multitude in the interpretation of the dream is identified right here as the 10 tribes. And thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him. Those are the 10 tribes, which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, blah, 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 blah. And it goes on and talks about it and how they come down and help, and they reinforce the faithful saints here in this land. So he goes in to talk more about the lion here if you would continue to read in the prophecies. And it all ties together in terms of like what we believe too, that these people have to return for Adam on Diamond. We are actually going to build a new Jerusalem in Missouri, but there are going to be some catastrophic things. The eagle's going to be burned before that happens. Whatever that means, whatever that entails. The 10 tribes return before that happens. Whatever that means, whatever that entails, right? Like, and you've got to be open that you're going to have a lot of changes, because the positioning of the church right now is preparing the saints to be a home-centered, gospel, church-supported establishment where we might not have access to our church buildings, right? We might not have access to the global church for a time. And we might have to rely on the priesthood in our own homes, in our sacred and holy places to stand in for a time until the lion comes, until things cool down, or whatever it might be, right? We're going to go through some hard times, and we've got a prophet at the helm. I know that President Nelson is a prophet of God. I know that he's led by Jesus Christ. I know that it may sound weird, the things that he's sending out in letters today, that it might sound like they're capitulating to globalists or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, right? They are the mouthpiece of the Lord right now, and if we follow them, we will be blessed.
They're doing exactly as Christ wants them to do.
Exactly.
Right? They have this grand knowledge, right? The foresight, the long-term vision of what needs to happen.
His number one goal right now is gathering Israel. You don't think he's aware of these things? You don't think he's aware of the prophecies? You don't think President Nelson has read the Apocrypha a time or two, right? You don't think he speaks to the Lord, or is ministered to by angels? I believe he is. I think Sister Wendy Nelson has pretty much, let that cat out of the bag, that's what happens. She has to leave the room while he's visited, right? Or whatever it is. And again, speculation, in my opinion, that's what I think is happening. But like, he is a prophet, okay? Stay in the boat. Don't freak out and get swayed to and fro with every wind of doctrine right now. There are prophecies that if we would take the time to study them faithfully, like these, as I have studied them, the more I study them, the more I try to prove them wrong, but with a faithful eye, hoping that they're right? The more I do that, the more I find anchors that prove that they're right to me. Now, the cosmic stuff I believe in is a huge one, because this all fits perfectly in with it. And all the weird chapters around it that most people don't get to or read or can't understand without having some catastrophic weird paradigm like I do, they don't make sense, and they're hard to read. But I'm saying we can. It's there now, and it's much more entertaining to me than going on a Disney binge, right, or a Netflix binge or whatever it is, to dive into these and to see these visions. I mean, look where we could get lost speaking for hours about these things and how amazing they tie into everything else going on. This is exciting.
We're not going to do an episode on the Black Widow movie.
I actually did see that one. I went up recently up north on a little staycation in the state, and we did see that up in the theater. I was entertained by it, right? But yeah, we could do entire episodes breaking down all of the symbolism where these things are relating to our times. They're rubbing in our faces a lot of the ideologies and things that are going on behind the scenes that most people are oblivious to, or they think only happens in an entertainment world or a sci-fi world. Yet we are about to see great signs in the heavens, right? Not just a Star Wars, and not like we're going to see it off a million light years away, and we'll have 20 years to prepare before it gets to us.
It'll be intimate though. It'll be localized.
Right. It'll be fast and like a thief in the night. You're not going to expect it. It's going to appear maybe, So, all right. A little too cryptic there at the end, but I love you guys. This has been awesome. We're going to end it here for our read of the Ezra's Eagle prophecy. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. We'll come back with some more cool stuff.